You were talking about your mother, and the last thing you said, I think, was that she was fearful. I think you were talking about that she was really afraid of things.
Uh, yes, I long thought that a large part of my life, up until more recent years, that the most salient quality of my own life was fear, this of the world and people and everything around it. And at some point, I realized that I got that, from my mother. My mother's life was much the same in that regard, and it was not only her own personal fear about things, but she was she had something of a little bit of I don't know, a little bit of a paranoia about the world in general and people in it, and that thought people would try to take advantage of her and well, that kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
in general. So she walked through life with a lot of fear. She was especially afraid, I think, of my father,
Mm-hmm.
and that translated into her behavior with, well, at least with me. I don't know about Lillian and Frida. And there were things I have felt that this is not blame. It's just a matter of recognizing certain patterns and that evolved in making me who I am, and preventing me from being something else. One of those things was that I may see maybe a clock, an alarm clock, stop working, and I'd want to take it apart to see it. My mother would say, "Oh no, you know, you have to wait till your father comes home." She was afraid that if I took it apart, I would break it. I wouldn't put it together again, and my father would come home and see that and be angry with her for allowing me to do that. Now I don't know that would have been the case. I don't know that my father would have done that, but she was afraid of that kind of thing. As a result, a lot of my own natural curiosity was repressed, or not repressed by me, but was stifled, and because I wasn't given the opportunity to express herself in that way. Consequently, I did not become a mechanic.
But you became other things.
Well, that's true. I became other
Is
things.
there anything else you want to say about your mother before we move on to another personality? Any other final words about your mother?
There are some moments that I remember that stand out, and it was when I was a young man. One of them was when I was a young man and was moving out of the house, and my mother was very upset about that, to the extent that she said, "Where did I fail?" Meaning herself. Where did she fail? That I'm, as an adult now, moving out of the house, and it struck me as symptomatic of probably a lot that went on all during my growing up years that was holding on to me. I guess where I didn't have the opportunity to really expand and reach out and test my own abilities and inclinations as a result of her wanting to hold on. But I believe it's because her own life was so circumscribed by the dominance of my father, I believe. And yet she was so obviously such a strong and central part of the family life, and yet I think she felt, and it was apparent to everybody else, that my father dominated the family. It was really good to see her expand after my father died, and come out and started late in life enjoying a large part of the life that she didn't have earlier on. And she was, as I mentioned before, she was so well received in the world. Everyone spoke well of her.
Well, you were very devoted to her yourself, weren't you, in her final years?
I, I, I cared for her. I don't, I guess devoted would describe it as well, but I never thought of it that way. It wasn't a matter of it almost seemed as though it wasn't a matter of choice. Of course it was, but there didn't seem to be any other thing to do. It was just inconceivable of doing anything else. You know, how in the world, the way I thought about it, I mean, how can I not take care of her? I never thought of it as something worthy of note or to require any particular attention. Of course, you would do that. I would have thought the question for me would be to the people who didn't take care of their parents. You know, what's wrong with them? Or, you know, why is it not why are you taking care of your parent? So I never I thought it was much. Although I was told that at times that it was bordered on obsessive, but I never thought of it that way.
Let's talk a bit about you now for posterity's sake. Can you give some biographical data about yourself for future generations? When you were born, your status in the family, what that was like growing up, the youngest of three children, also the profession you chose, your career, and without getting overly personal, if you're uncomfortable with that, just talk about yourself a bit. You're now the subject of this next few minutes.
Well, I was born in Philadelphia, and
What's your birthday?
March 21st, 1936. I don't. Was born in South Philadelphia. We lived there, as I mentioned before, for the first 4 years of my life. I don't remember any of that. Just a total blank. And when you talk about my place in a family, the role in a family, I don't know that I have ever thought much about it. It was. I remember some periods that were historical moments during that time. I was born in 1936. World War II started on 1941, so I was 5 years old when it started, and I remember that whole period. I remember very clearly things that went on during that period. You know, the blackouts, the black shades on the houses, and the air raid boxes on the blocks, and the air raid wardens, and so forth. The rationing, gas, sugar, other commodity rationing, and of course, war ended in 1945. So what was it, 6, 4 years, 10, 11 years old at the time it ended. And I remember that. Now, that's a very historic period in the history of this country. And yeah, I remember when all that was taking place. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with family life, but I guess in a way it does, because there's early summers we spent at the New Jersey shore. At least I remember 1 or 2 summers then. When we would go down the shore rent a place for the summer, and the war ended during the summer, and I remember all the celebrations at that time.
How much older than you was Frida?
Frida's 3 years older.
And how
than
much
me.
older than you was my mother?
Lillian is 12 years older. And Lillian wasn't really a part of the family life that I recall. She, as she told me later, she was very much a part of that. She, in fact, took care of Frida and me when my mother was working, my father was working, and so Lillian apparently spent a fair amount of time taking care of us, but I don't recall any of that.
Or about you? Go back to so you grew up and what did you
Yeah.
went to university?
Yes. I'm trying to remember the childhood. Apparently,
Okay.
large blanks of childhood. Apparently, also, I was a very sickly child when I was very young. I was born with hernias, and I had some major surgery when I was very young, and wore a brace, and all kinds of stuff. I had a birthmark that I was told covered the whole side of my face, and then it was treated and reduced. So, and I was a colicky baby. I mean, I was plagued with all kinds of chronic illnesses. as it turned out, I don't know why, maybe to compensate or what, and I don't remember any of that. I don't remember suffering at all. Oh, I had flat feet, and at that time that was considered a deformity. That and attempts to correct it were special shoes with built-up arches. So although my foot was flat, I had to wear shoes that were pushing my foot up. As a result, every night I was in agony. After the shoes were taken off, it was yeah, my pain every single night. My mother would have to rub my legs every night. Finally, I imagine everybody wised up and put on regular shoes, and I was fine after that. And rather than being a limitation, I mean, it was no limitation whatever. I mean, as you know, flat feet don't mean anything. So, Lillian was not in the house except when she came back for a period of time when she was first divorced between marriages. Apparently, my sister and I, Frida and I, had a lot of conflict. I really don't remember it though, but I do remember was the good things. Her support later, and she would take me along as a chaperone on her dates. I guess when she was going out on a date that she didn't particularly care for, she would take me. Frida, well, anyway, I played that role to some extent.
What role?
Well, just that of I don't know, protection. Not protection physically, but just being a third party along. I don't know how I got into the profession I did. It was not planned.
What profession was that?
I was a chemist, but it wasn't planned. I think as in school, I just tended towards the sciences. I recall later in college thinking that the liberal arts, the Bell Let, they were the most difficult courses. I mean, you had to interpret literature and understand history. I couldn't. That was beyond me. But math and physics and science, that was easy, and that was concrete. Of course, later I got a profound appreciation for literature and the my liberal arts subjects. And it was just kind of, I tended to take the kinds of courses I liked, and ended up a major in chemistry, and went into environmental science, and sort of just drifted. There's no plan to do that, which was a great mistake. One of the things if I would have had children, one of the reasons I would have had children was to be able to guide them to the best path for them to take.
So you were a chemist for how many years?
Oh, God, I guess a total about 35 years.
Would you work in a
Yeah.
big company?
I worked, yes, probably the longest period of time I worked was for the city of Philadelphia in the water department, environmental chemistry.
Did you enjoy your work?
I did. It was, it spanned a very active and fertile part of the development of the water quality regulations and legislation in our country. And it spans that whole era from virtually nothing to the pretty stringent regulations that we have today. And there's also a period of time when the federal government, through the Environmental Protection Agency, was getting involved in upgrading the water quality throughout the country. Lots of federal funds were available for that. So $3 out of every four for some major expansions and enterprises of municipal water systems came from the federal government. So there are all kinds of projects underway, research projects, and I was involved in that. It was an exciting time. I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed the part of operating, actually being involved in operating these huge facilities. utility facilities, water and wastewater treatment, and you're doing the research involved in developing new methods of treatment, and it was an exciting time. And things changed. It wasn't always smooth, but I enjoyed the work a lot. It was even getting into management was interesting because of a whole new set of challenges and demands, and getting work done through other people, and the liaisons with the outside agencies, dealing with all kinds of regulatory agencies and private industrial firms and the public, and I mean it was a wide variety of things, and you could almost create your own job at that time earlier on. So I got a great deal of experience, a great deal of varied experience, and I really I did. I liked it a lot. I loved it. And then in later years, it became at the very end before I left. It just became a little bit too much of. Although I enjoyed management, and I enjoyed the challenges involved in leadership and in motivation and getting people. It got to be that was, I mean, that was the whole job. I was away from the science, I was away from the research, and I'm now dealing with personalities and people, and sometimes it was a hassle. It was just, I had the other. Why can't you? Here's the job. Why can't we just do it instead of dealing with all the other the softer aspects of it? And after a while, at that point, I decided that it was time for a change.
And so what did you do?
Well, there was probably a breakdown in the planning process here because I left that work before figuring out what it is I would follow it up with. So, and I guess I got to enjoy the I guess the release from the pressure, and found that my life is filled up with other things without even trying that I take a great deal of pleasure in, and so I haven't really moved on to something else, but I am feeling the need to do that.
What have you filled your life with that brings you so much pleasure?
Well, I'm spending more time with have spent more time with friends and family, and I've traveled a bit, visiting people and doing some of the things that I love to do, but really didn't have time to do, and and involved in a relationship with the family that I spend a lot of time with. So I feel I'm enjoying a part of life that I really didn't take time for before.
Can you talk about the relationship that you have with our family since my mother died and the efforts that you've made to be a part of the big events?
Well, it was no effort. It's marvelous. All it is enriching for me. I don't want this to sound corny against the family, but it has been probably one of the most wonderful developments of my life in getting connected with the family, Lillian's family up here, and well, mainly with Lillian's family up here. I can't. It's hard for me to express how much that means to me to come up. And it was interesting to learn from Lori yesterday that um, even though I come up only for usually the special occasions, special events where the family gets together, that Lori was saying, well, the rest of them don't get together much more often than that. Anyway, so apparently I'm up here seeing everybody as much as they're all seeing each other. And it means a great deal to me.
What was your relationship like with my mother before? Well, can you talk about, like, did your relationship with my mother start to change when after she was diagnosed with cancer?
No, it started to change when she had the Guillain-Barré. And when I heard about that, I forget, maybe it was you who told me, I don't know. But when I heard that she had Guillain-Barré, I didn't know what it was, but you told me what it was, and I came right up, and um, I don't know exactly the mental processes involved in that, but it was just something of a realization that I wanted to have closer connections somehow. I mean, I always loved everybody, enjoyed everybody up here, but I so seldom saw anybody. And I think one of the things that was going on was when my father died, Lillian, of course, came down. Before he died, he was sick, came down. And we were talking, we were sitting in my living room talking about that she hadn't been down here to visit for 12 years. She hadn't been down to visit her parents, for 12 years. It took my father, you know, dying, or this was before he died, but he was just prior to that. It took my father getting ill like that and dying for her to come down. And this is not, I'm not, all I'm mentioning this for is that was a reflection of what our own, Lillian's, Frida's, mine, my parents, what our family relationship was like. And I didn't want that. I didn't want that to continue for me to do that. So I would come up and visit more often, and now has become, it's really become, even though we're not close, um, it has become really essential for me. I don't know how to say it. I'm having difficulty expressing this, but and joy isn't the word. I get a great deal of gratification about coming up and seeing everybody, getting to know not only my nieces, but my great nieces and nephews, and also the spouses, Jackie and Lori and Robert. It's it's been really special for me. It's in some way, perhaps I'm getting some of what I didn't create in my own immediate family, not only with my parents and siblings, but in my marriages, having children and so forth. So I don't know all the emotional, psychological implications of it, but it's really important to me. And usually it would come up here for Passover. But this year Frida called and asked me if to come there, and I wanted to take that opportunity too, to do the same thing with Frida's family.
What was that like?
That was great. It was very special. They had Passover Seder at the it was at the country club. It was a community kind of Seder, and all Frida's kids were there with their children and spouses, and Margaret and her kids went also, and we had a wonderful time. It was really good. I'd love for Margaret and their kids to come up here with the Passover sometime. She has really her kids are really nice. So this has been a real good connection. I feel about the Goldblatt family. I mean, I feel that this is my family. I don't have, the Goldblatt family is my family just as much as as Frida's family is my family.
Um,
You're tired.
I know, I want to finish this tape. Tell me about your relationship with my mother towards the end.
Oh, yeah, I didn't. We had. I don't remember that really very well, but I know that as in those last several years, from the time she had Guillain Barre and on, and beyond that, we had at least few more conversations that we hadn't had before. Lillian, I didn't take advantage of it, but Lillian was really a resource that that I could have used and didn't to find out about my own family, my grandfather. In fact, you probably suggested that to me. I don't remember, but it's because she was a lot older than I, and she had memories of things that I didn't know existed. But we had other conversations about more intimate conversations. Not a lot. I mean, not a whole lot, but it was. I felt it was a closer relationship. I felt closer. I think she probably did also, and knew her at that time, more than I had in all the previous years, because we just
What did
never
you
spent time.
discover that you had in common?
Lillian was. I felt that she was thoughtful about the about relationships, of family relationships. Because mainly that's some things we talked about. There were other things, but mainly we're interested in family. So she was very thoughtful about that. She had insights, and she had a perspective that was different from mine, and new for me to hear. And she just had something to say about relationships, about the family, about the world that was valuable to me.
What perspective did she have that was different than yours?
She had well, she had the she saw. I guess she saw by the time I was aware of my family relationships. I guess things had evolved from something they were earlier, where I wasn't around or wasn't aware of. Lillian, kind of filled that in. Lillian saw things from a point of view that I couldn't have. Not only didn't have it, I couldn't have because I wasn't there. And not only wasn't I there physically, but even when I wasn't there um, when I was so young, I just wasn't aware of things. And so it mainly had to do with the mother. I know Lillian found it. I could understand it, but I didn't have the same reaction, or at least to that extent. Lillian was found it just I don't know what words she used. Impossible. It was impossible for her to be with my mother. For later years, she managed to endure for a few hours at a time, but she just it was so hard for her. I appreciated later. It was not. I mean, it was just. It wasn't willful that she didn't spend time. It wasn't that she'd come down to see my mother, and and Lily and I would go out and go do things because she could only take so much of my mother. But it was genuine. She just couldn't. She couldn't handle it. So I got to appreciate. It's easy to it's be easy for me in Philadelphia, taking care of my mother, to say, well, why isn't my sister down here? But having appreciating just what well, she wasn't there because she couldn't. She just wasn't capable of dealing with my mother. Things like that. And through a different, I thought of my father as the abusive one. Well, Lillian introduced another point of view in that my father was maybe was driven to he was driven to his extremes. So things like that I got a little different view on.
We've got less than a minute to go on this tape. Any final words? If you could pick a tree, what kind of a tree would you be? And that was a joke question. That was a Barbara Walters question. Any final words?
It'd be a beach.
Like a beached whale?
A beach tree.
Like the one in my front yard that you were admiring?
Yeah. I would. This was a nice opportunity for me too, and not because I was able to say anything revelatory, but just to think about the things, and which you don't usually do. I guess I'm not that introspective, but I think this will start me maybe thinking about things a little bit more. about the family relationships and where you come from, where I come from, where I'm going. So thank you.
Hey, it was a pleasure, and you bring a lot of joy to our lives too. My kids just love you.
Well, yeah, I'm happy. I'm really happy about that because I do too. I mean, I love them too, and they're just delightful.
And they feel that. I mean, it's not often kids really meet someone who really takes a delight in them, and they really feel that from you. And I think that's why they care so much about you, is because they really know that you care that much about them. That's rare for some to show it. You take a real interest. That's so rare.
No, I'm glad they feel that.
Yeah. And we feel that too.
By the way, I also wanted to say that